Starship Enterprise. Its mission: to seek out new life, survey uncharted worlds, and defend the Federation of the USS Enterprise.
The Enterprise NX-01 was the first Earth starship with a human-built propulsion system. It was a new generation of starship, meant for long-term space travel and exploration.
The NX-01 is basically an experiment. Christened the Enterprise. Actually, it's the very first ship to be called Enterprise. Its whole purpose was to explore the unknown, go places where humans have never gone before. As time went on, the design of the ship was going to relate itself to the way it's been discovered in space, how space travel works, light speed works, all that type of new kind of technologies that were discovered.
In 2245, the NCC-1701 was launched from the San Francisco Fleet Yards. This Constitution-class Enterprise was in service for 25 years, including 5 highly successful years under the command of Captain James Kirk. Following a quarter-century of service to Starfleet, called into dry dock to be given a complete upgrade of all its major systems.
The retrofit was to upgrade the ship to handle the new stresses, the new loads, the new speeds.
The old cylindrical nacelles on the ship were replaced, as were the nacelle struts. This allowed for a newer aerodynamic design. The ship was also equipped with dual extravehicular activity bays. This allowed maintenance and cargo ships easier access to the Enterprise. After many months in dry dock for refit, the Enterprise was put back in service. It was now one of the most recognized and respected ships in the Federation.
The Enterprise pretty much has become the ship. Being so, it's always the challenge of alien forces to take it down. It'd be the gold mark for any race to take that ship down, claim victory. The Enterprise under attack from the Reliant Khan's crew, the shields weren't up. They were not ready for an attack. And so when the surprise attack took place, they were hitting all their vital areas, pretty much making them helpless. After the Enterprise encountered the Reliant and sustained its heavy damage, its first point of origin was to go to the space dock and get repairs. In that time, Captain Kirk has to commandeer the ship to steal it to get Spock back to his homeworld. The ship had not been fixed, it hadn't been repaired. It left home never to come back. When it encountered the Klingons, they pretty much had a field day on the ship. They had the cloaking device, all kinds of technologies that ship in that particular state was not ready to handle.
Following a costly encounter with a Klingon bird of prey, the NCC-1701 was given its self-destruct command. This resulted in the complete destruction of the Enterprise. Following the loss of the refitted Enterprise, Starfleet commissioned an old Constitution-class ship, and in honor of previous service to the Federation, renamed it USS Enterprise, service number NCC-1701A.
It was the end of the era for that Constitution-style class of ship. After the attack on the Enterprise by Khan, a whole design team kind of went to work to figure out what would have attack on further. Obviously, the neck would have been blown apart. It was a very weak design element in that particular ship. When it came time to recommission an Enterprise B, the Excelsior was the obvious choice because it's the strongest of the Federation ships.
Design changes led to the Excelsior-class vessels to have a more durable neck. The nacelles had been set to a lower profile, and the struts were closer to the body. It was given a more compact design to keep the limbs of the ship from being a focus of an enemy during an attack.
The Enterprise B's maiden voyage, it was a christening ceremony. Admiral Kirk was there to kind of give it the send-off, and as things go, space emergency takes place. It gets encountered kind of an energy ribbon, which they are not sure what it is. Being that Captain Kirk was on board, a veteran of all kinds of situations like this, decided that he could alter the ship's deflector array to basically put a hole in their energy ribbon long enough to pull the survivors of the ship out. In doing so, the tendrils of the energy ribbon, which is just this static ball of energy and electricity, actually strikes part of the ship, destroying the entire section where Captain Kirk was working, thus giving him basically his last flight on the Enterprise.
Prior to its decommission, the Enterprise B successfully charted over 140 new star systems and made first contact with 17 new civilizations.
The Enterprise C, encountering attack by the Romulan forces, pretty much met its demise in a heavy battle. It fought as long as it could, as boldly as it could, but it was no match for what the Romulans had to throw at it, making Starfleet very aware that the Romulan threat was a lot stronger than they had imagined, and technology would take us into new frontiers from this point on.
Galaxy-class starship was the new design, which would carry the name Enterprise. Now the flagship of the Federation, its size was unmatched in Starfleet.
The purpose of this ship was more taking out of the battleship mode and putting it more into a family in space. What they wanted to have is communities. The ship was designed to stay in space much longer than previous Enterprise designs.
The immense size of the Enterprise D allowed approximately 1,016 officers, enlisted crewmen, and civilians on board. The Galaxy-class Enterprise had the most advanced warp core in the fleet at the time. It could sustain a warp speed of 9.6 for 12 consecutive hours.
As the science of warp speed kind of advances in the Star Trek universe, the ships also change as they go along. If you look at the ships on a profile point of view from the original to the D, the original Enterprise, you see the nacelles are higher than the saucer, and as the ships progress in design, they actually go lower to the point where they're parallel with the saucer to the point with the D where they're below the saucer. The purpose of this is all with the new aesthetic design of longer space travel and the way aerodynamic warp factors go into play.
The Enterprise D had a new phaser design. It had multiple strips positioned on its hull, which allowed the phasers to move independently toward different targets. It also had 2 photon torpedo bays located on the ship. Each bay had the ability to fire simultaneously, and each torpedo could also be given its own individual target.
A bunch of rogue Klingons decide to take it on, take it down, and claim the victory. They pretty much meet their match with the Enterprise D. The battle takes place, they take out the Klingons, but in doing so, they've damaged their own ship to the point where it's unrecoverable. They have to separate the saucer from the body, let the body go to waste, evacuate the crew to the saucer. The ship had to go down, it had to crash. There was no other way to keep in space. It was losing its orbit. It would have burnt up had they not been able to get down. As smooth as you could get it in was the way that everyone was able to survive.
successor to the Enterprise D was the new Sovereign-class starship, surface number NCC-1701E. Larger and tactically more capable than the Enterprise D, this new vessel was designed to defend the Federation and its allies.
The main aesthetic difference between the D and the E is the saucer shape. They're both ovals, but on the D, it's more of a wider layout, and on the Enterprise E, the oval is elongated with the length of the ship.
The Enterprise E was given a much tighter design. The neck between the saucer and the body of the ship has been decreased. The nacelles have been elongated for an increase in warp capability, and to also increase the durability of the ship during extended warp travel.
The Enterprise E had a purpose, unlike the other ships were basically advancements in the lineage. The Enterprise E was basically designed to battle the Borg. Its whole purpose was to fight this enemy that's whole purpose was to destroy and take over Earth. Basically was meant to be a battleship. It's a much sleeker ship, it's a longer ship in comparison to the original Enterprise, which was roughly around 900 feet. This one was 2,250 feet. Vast difference in scale. Being that it was an attack vessel, its entire primary defense system and attack system was set forward on the saucer and the underside of the ship. They felt this would be the strongest point, always keeping its nose high on its enemy, and being the one that would do the attacking as opposed to defending.
The most advanced tactical upgrade to the Enterprise E was the addition of the quantum torpedoes. Designed to help battle the Borg, these torpedoes used zero-point energy, which increased their destructive power up to 2.5 times that of a standard torpedo. With the successful destruction of a Borg cube in 2373, the quantum torpedo proved to aid in the Federation's ongoing battle with the Borg. During a hostile encounter with the Riemann vessel Scimitar, the Enterprise, under the command of Captain Jean-Luc Picard, collides with the enemy ship, crippling the Scimitar and severely damaging the Enterprise E.
The Enterprise E survives the battle, comes back to Earth. Pretty much last moments recorded in the space dock, being retrofitted with all its latest and newest technologies and awaiting its further and newest missions. Carrying on with the design of the Enterprise, the next numerical Enterprise would be the F. In design sense, it's something that always on the drawing board. Ideas are always conceived of what the new ship would be, what would advance the ship from where we know they are now, from the Enterprise E, where would you go?
The continuing voyages of the Starship Enterprise will last for generations to come. Always the most distinguished of Starfleet vessels, any ship bearing the name Enterprise will continue to be recognized throughout the galaxy.
This is your boy Yuck Mouth. I'm doing an audio about is warp drive.
Notoriously, especially in intergalactic distances. Warp drive. Can you tell us about what Star Trek gets right and wrong?
Yeah, what about those things? And when I wrote the book, what surprised me is those are among the most sort of fantastical things in Star Trek, the kind of things that seem the farthest out. And what is amazing is that they're not impossible. At least we can't say that they're impossible. I mean, the motivation is clear. Traveling at the speed of light doesn't get you very far. The distance between here and the center of the galaxy is maybe 30,000 light years. So even traveling at the speed of light, it takes you 30,000 years to get to the center of the galaxy. That does not make for an exciting episode. And so they had to figure some way to go faster than light. But the problem is that you all learn in school in kindergarten that you can't travel faster than the speed of light. That's what Einstein says, right? But you have to be like a lawyer and parse a little more carefully. You can't travel through space faster than the speed of light, but space can do whatever the heck it wants. And so, in fact, had Einstein been around, he would have thought of something that he would have called warp drive. And warp drive, of course, is a way to go faster than light. And the writers, of course, if you read how it's supposed to happen, of course, it's nonsense. But in fact, in principle, you might be able to do it. In fact, given the laws of general relativity, you, in principle, could, because what general relativity tells us is that space is dynamical. It can expand, it can contract in the presence of it. It can warp. And in fact, of course, I brought warp drives here, as you can see. We actually experimented beforehand with several balloons, but happily the World Science Festival was able to provide another thing which works better.
Safe science.
So yeah, safe science. In fact, always perform safe science on stage. But this is you won't be able to see all the details. It's kind of an impressionistic example, but it actually is exactly what warp drive would be if you could make a warp drive. So what I've done here is you can sort of see the sun and the moon and Saturn, just to give you the local environment. And this is a beautiful rendition of the USS Enterprise. You would recognize that. And so I've taped it to this balloon. And here's a star system here, and here's another star system here. And I want to show you how the Enterprise can move away from this star system and towards this star system without ever moving with respect to its local surroundings. And you do that simply by expanding space behind the spacecraft and contracting it in front. So I'm just going to stand behind you. May, that's why I want to stand behind you.
Why are you doing it near me?
No, there we go. If I'd used the balloon, it would have popped. But what you can see is I squished the balloon behind it, and these stars get dragged away, but the Enterprise, of course, never moves with respect to its local surroundings. So this is possible in principle in the real universe. The question is it possible in practice? And the answer is we don't know. It's an open question, because in order to make space expand, you have to fill it up with a very special kind of energy, something called negative energy, which sounds like something that was invented by a physicist in a room without windows for too long, which is true, in fact. But it actually exists. Due to the laws of quantum mechanics, negative energy configurations can exist for very short times. But what we don't know, and really this is the open question, is could you make enough negative energy to actually do anything like this? And we just don't know the answer. People like me actually get paid to worry about that. But the answer is, if you could make negative energy configurations in principle, you could make a warp drive.
But it turns out that warp drive is more than just a science fiction fantasy. And here's why. This short equation may turn out to be a most extraordinary discovery. It might be our passport to the universe. And this is the sci-fi fan who came up with the idea when he was a college student.
I was watching Star Trek one evening, and I was on my PhD.
Trekkie, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And in Star Trek, they always talk about warping space and relativity, and I thought maybe there should be a way in which we can do this consistently within relativity and not just talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I went back to the office, and then I spent all Saturday in the office doing calculations, and I did come up with a model, with an idea in which you can do warping of space. Never published.
Possible to warp space and time and leap across the universe in moments. Here at the Multiverse Exhibition in Washington, D.C., this travelator helps us understand how warping space-time can get us across the universe without accelerating.
The empty space behind your starship expands rapidly, pushing you in the forward direction. In the same way for this walkway, new space constantly emerges, which moves you along in that direction.
At the other end of the travelator, we get a sense of what's happening in front of my starship.
Space is compressed. In the same way in this walkway, space is being compressed, which moves you along. So you have the illusion that you're moving. Actually, it's space.
To turn Alcubierre's equation into reality, I would need huge amounts of energy that would create a kind of bubble capable of warping space-time. At the front of the bubble, the space-time between me and my destination is compressed.
pulling us together. At the same time, space-time behind the bubble is expanded, pushing me forwards. And all this happens in an instant, many times faster than the speed of light.
Miguel's warp drive is an ingenious way around Einstein's cosmic speed limit. But it's still theoretical and lacks one crucial ingredient: an exotic substance called negative energy, something that many scientists aren't even sure exists. But one man does believe in negative energy. He even claims he's created it in his lab.
The warp drive. It sounds like science fiction. Here, across the universe in a warping bubble of space would make perfect sense to Einstein. There is one snag. A warp drive can only function with a mysterious power source, negative energy. And today, most scientists believe negative energy is just an unproven theoretical concept.
But Steve Lamoureux, an atomic physicist at Yale University, has made it his mission to track down this exotic form of energy. And he believes the answer is all around us, in the fabric of space itself.
We normally think of the vacuum of space as being as completely empty, but in fact, there's energy density in empty space, and we call that the zero-point energy of space.
The theory of quantum mechanics predicts that empty space is actually constantly shimmering with microscopic pulses of energy as particles pop in and out of existence. To make negative energy, you have to find a way to suppress this constant chatter. Steve realized the way to do this was to change the shape of space.
There's a nice analogy. If you have two ships on a rough ocean, one ship will tend to reflect waves from it, the other one does the same thing. So the wave density between the two ships is a little bit less compared to one by itself, which is surrounded by a rough sea. So you put two ships on a rough sea, they'll be mutually attracted and they'll come together.
Steve reasoned that if he created a narrow enough region of empty space like the area between the two ships, then some of the shimmering zero-point energy would not fit inside it. The energy of empty space outside the narrow region would be stronger and force it to shrink. That force would be the signature of negative energy, and Steve set out to create it in his lab. It was an idea that would consume him for more than a decade.
We call the experiment the time machine. Actually, the time machine 2, this is the second version of the experiment. We call it that because I invested 15 years of my life in this measurement. That was a lot of time. So it's a time-wasting machine, more accurately defined.
Inside this vacuum chamber are two small metal plates, sitting less than the width of a human hair apart from one another. To get them that close and not to touch, the metal has to be perfectly flat, down almost to the atomic level.
The zero-point fluctuations of free space won't fit between those plates as well. So when you bring these two plates together, there are fewer fluctuations between the plates than there are outside the plates. The force builds up, and it actually gets stronger and stronger as the plates get closer together. And that force we refer to as arising from negative energy.
The zero-point energy fluctuations outside the plates are stronger than those between, so pressure from the outside pushes them together. Or think of it another way. The negative energy between the plates expands space around it. Steve's years of meticulous labor have made him the first person on Earth to have measured a force produced by negative energy. But the amount he's detected is minuscule.
The force is equal to the weight of a red blood cell in the Earth's gravitational field. So it's tiny. But if you add up thousands of these plates like we have in our experiment, you can actually achieve a palpable and useful force.
Steve's discovery may only be a baby step towards a warp drive, but he's confirmed that Miguel Alcubierre's warp drive theory does not violate the laws of physics. The energy needed to warp space and propel a warp drive forward actually exists.
So what we're doing here at Houston, we're trying to generate a microscopic instance of what could be classified as a space warp. So just to kind of give a little background, the idea of a space warp works on the principle of expanding and contracting space in such a way that allows you to go somewhere very, very quickly. When you talk about interstellar distances, it's very, very difficult to cross that distance in time periods that are not measured in centuries or millennia. So that's the idea that, or that's the limitation that drives us to think about the idea of a space warp. And an airport has those rolling walkways that you can get onto that helps you cover the distance quicker between gates, right? So as you're walking along and say somebody's next to you walking at a similar rate, as you step onto the moving walkway, you'll appear to start moving faster relative to the other person that's not on the walkway. So in principle, that's like a terrestrial analogy for the idea of how it might appear. So it's very simplified, but just to try and help articulate the point of view. So in principle, a space warp would allow you to go to places like Alpha Centauri in time periods measured in weeks, months, as opposed to decades or centuries or millennia. What we're doing in the lab is very scientific, very controlled. We're simply trying to generate a very microscopic instance of this type of phenomena to show that we've properly interpreted the mathematics and done something in a very controlled scientific manner. So, nobody needs to quit their day jobs. You're not going to bolt this to a spacecraft. This is very much in the realm of a science pursuit. But it's the right next step to take. We have to get kind of existence proof that we've properly understood and applied the mathematics. General relativity has made a lot of interesting predictions over the years. So this is just one of those things where I think after a good amount of due diligence, we'll eventually get there. But how long it takes to get to application, again, if it's 200 years, I don't know. I think based on the work I've done in the last couple of years to reduce the energy requirements to something that's a little bit more tenable. Some of the previous energy estimates were very, very large, and most scientists, myself included, were originally skeptical that you could potentially ever manifest this idea. But the work I've done the last couple of years has been really encouraging and gotten myself and a lot of other scientists interested that maybe we've moved it from the realm of impractical into plausible. And so that's why you see some of this activity at this point.
I think lifetime, but maybe our children's lifetime. I think Star Trek, it will be possible, but who knows with the government? We might be having starships, but who knows? So I told you that's gonna be tricky. So stay with me, stay tuned. I'm gonna hit you up later on with another one. Peace.